Hey guys, it's the Pink King here, and by your popular demand, we are finally making the tier list video. Yep, here we go. As you can see, we've got 5 categories here. We've got awful, meh, it's alright I guess, good, and, if it's really impressive to me, hella fun. 5 categories. I think this is a good way to gauge it. Without any more stalling, let's get into ranking all the most recent episodes.
And here we go.
First up, we have the pilot. Ooh. Now, I rewatched all these episodes before this video. The pilot is a very interesting one because if you were to watch this after watching the most recent ones, you can see the big difference here. You know, some of the designs are different, the style was still trying to be worked out, and the color palette. In the original episode, the color palette was very like muted with a lot of like grays and just very dull colors. But later on, they added more pop to it. And you know, for a pilot, you know, still trying to figure things out, it worked pretty well. There was some really effective jokes. It was a nice little introduction into this world of what this show is supposed to be, setting up the formula with them like them having a killing people industry. So for a first introduction into this world, it was solid. It was solid. Was it hella fun? I cannot say, because, you know, it was still trying to work its way out. There was a lot of problems in this episode, but honestly, it was a pilot. You can excuse it. So I'm going to put it in, it's alright. No, I'm going to put it in good. No, I'm going to change it. I'm going to put it in good. I think good is a good spot. You know, it's not great, but for what it was nice. Then we get on to the first official episode of the series, Murder Family. Ooh, you tell you what, this came out on Halloween 2020, and it was quite exciting to watch, honestly. You know, this was the first official episode of a series for VivziePop, so how would it stack up, essentially? I remember watching it and enjoying it when it first came out, and rewatching it now. Yeah, I still had a good time. The color palette got a much needed boost with a lot of variety. In this episode, there is actually a little bit of difference with the human world and the hell world, which I appreciate. I appreciate they make a clear difference with the hell world being a lot of greys, reds and blacks, and the human world being a lot of blues, yellows and purples. Just a lot of nice contrasting colors. And the jokes were pretty good. We got more character development into Moxie, Stolas. And you know, it sets the stage really well. The only problem I would have with it is that maybe it tried to do a little too much within such a short time. It had a great opening, but it's sort of kind of brushed aside the ending. The ending kind of felt a bit rushed for the sake of a gag. But overall, it was pretty good. I think, for me, I'd put it just behind the pilot in good. I think that's a fair spot to put it. Episode 2, Lululand. Now this one was very interesting, as this was the first Stolas-centric episode. We got to see more into his family, with him having a daughter in Octavia. Fantastic song, by the way. Fantastic song in the beginning from Stolas. It was really quite emotional, it was really well animated, and it was just gorgeous. What else is there to say? It was gorgeous. The characters were still really fun, although this is where they start to like flanderize Stolas a bit. Like they start to make him very obsessed with Blitz. But for a second episode, I think it was handled alright. Not great, but it was alright. The animation was really good, especially with the final battle, the fire, the song. It was really well done. And the emotional scenes were surprisingly impactful. I didn't really care for the Moxie and Millie's side story. I didn't really find that interesting. So I think that just kind of takes up a bit of time. So although it's not on the levels of the first two, I'm gonna put it in first in it's alright, I guess. I think that's a fitting spot to put it. Episode 3, Spring Broken. Now this one I'm not so sure about, honestly. Again, good animation, and I like the fact that we're getting a little bit more Luna into the story, but again, nothing really interesting to hook us yet. It's just all very generic. And honestly, this one kind of goes by. It's not very memorable. I know a lot of people are thirsting over Veronica, but like I had the opposite effect. I was repulsed by her in this episode. I just didn't find her and Blitz that interesting in this episode. I don't know why. It's just like them talking to each other. It didn't click with me. It didn't make me like laugh that much. I get what this episode was trying to do, but it just kind of didn't do it that well. Moxie and Millie's storyline surprisingly were the funniest bit in this episode. As a contrast to the previous one, it was really funny. But yeah, again, I don't think that's going to save it. I think this is going to be the first meh. Yep, this is the first meh episode. And for 4 episodes in, not a good start so far. Not looking too good, Chief. Episode 4, Cherub. Again, another just... In terms of storyline, this one's pretty forgettable. Nothing really long-lasting, nothing really interesting, but this one is funny. It ramps up the comedy with the little rivalry between heaven and hell. It was really funny. Some of the jokes they included really surprised me. They managed to make the gnome sound effect work really well. It just like makes me like, ah yes, this is a YouTube thing, yeah. Yeah, I can get behind this. So despite it not being that plot relevant, it was really funny. And I think the jokes, along with some of the great animation they use, like really helps this episode stand out. So is it better than Murder Family though? Ooh. You know what, yeah, I think it is better than Murder Family. I don't think it's quite on the level of the pilot yet, but I think it's definitely better than the Murder Family episode. The jokes were better, the animation was better, everything in this episode you wanted to see. It was a nice, fun episode. Episode 5, the one that introduces Stryker. Honestly, disappointed in the end by this episode, very disappointed. You know, because we're going to Millie's home turf, so it's honestly, everything here is setting up that we're getting more character development for Millie. After all, it's her parents, but for some reason they make it into another Moxie episode, which, why? Like, he's already had his spot like a couple times previous episodes, so we were in a perfect moment to like establish more of Millie, but for some reason they just completely skip past her despite it being her hometown. And they just settle for a fish out of water story. So, yeah, I did not care for this episode. The only parts I did care for was Stryker. You know, voiced by Norman Reedus here. He was quite intimidating. I mean, he really does suit the business. Like, they lure you in into thinking that he really is a good fit for IMP. And that ending was really quite impactful because they really make him quite terrifying. He was threatening, and his animation was really well done. I like the little rattlesnake noises they made for him. A very unique and iconic trait for him. But I think that the overall idea and the plot for this episode just wasn't up to par, unfortunately. So, I'll put it in alright. It's alright, I guess. Like, I can watch it. It's fine to watch. It's just like, it's a missed opportunity at best. Episode 6. Now this one has great animation. When they're in the drugged state with Moxie and Blitz, the animation there is spectacular. They tell you so much about each character in such little time. The songs are really well done, and the final battle is so good. The animation is spectacular, better than some professional stuff. Like, it is really, really nice to see. It was dynamic. It really had a nice punchy feel to it, and this is when the gore and the R rating actually complemented the story instead of taking it away from it. And I really liked the setup of the human government. I liked that. I thought it was really quite interesting. It's a shame that we haven't seen them again ever since this episode, man. But I hope they come back because they had a really interesting storyline, and it'd be a shame not to use them again. In terms of negatives, I don't think there were negatives. This episode was really quite solid. It was fun. It kind of skips out on comedy a little bit, but it's got a nice tone, it's got beautiful animation, and it's got great music. So I think this is our first hella fun episode. I'm gonna say it, first hella fun episode. It's just got all the great qualities that I want to see, so this is gonna go in hella fun. Ooh, episode 7. Released 1 year later from the first episode on Halloween 2021, I believe. We follow Stolas, Blitz, Moxie, and Millie going to the Aussies. But overall, I don't know. The animation, again, was really good. The Aussies song with Fizzaroli and Ozzy was quite good, honestly. I don't know. I just didn't like Blitz that much in this episode. I didn't really like him that much in this episode. He's really hard to like as a character, but his enjoyment and him, falling on hard times gets us invested in him. So I don't know, for me personally, it was hard to get invested in this episode because, there was just so much going on at each point that it's hard to make up your mind about this one. As you can tell from my voice, I'm very confused. It's not bad, but it's got a few problems. Not that funny in a lot of aspects. It kind of falls a bit flat with some emotional moments, but it's got stellar animation yet again, and it's got some great songs in it. So again, I'm gonna have to put this in It's Alright, I guess. Yeah, I'll put it above the rodeo episode. I think that's a fair spot to put it. Next, we have the first episode out of order. Episode 8, the season finale. Yeah, as you saw from my video, you know where this is going. Straight to meh. Oh god. This episode had a lot of good ideas, a lot of great ideas, but it just failed to capitalize on any of them. This episode had so much potential, and it just completely falls to the wayside. They don't utilize any of it. And honestly, it doesn't even feel like a season finale. This is meant to end the big season 1. It doesn't even feel like a season finale. It doesn't feel special. It's a more Luna-centric episode, and it's nice to see her get some character development, but again, they just fail to capitalize on it as much as they should. And the wasted potential with the new sin of gluttony. And yeah, it's just, this whole episode just felt like a fan made it, like a 12-year-old fan wrote it, personally. And I'm sorry, that's probably gonna make some people mad by me saying that, but I just gotta say what I think it is. This is my opinion after all. Come on, give me some space. Don't come at me.
So you have chosen death.
Season 2 now. Starting off with Stolas' episode. Again, I'm kind of mixed on this. Again, it's nice to get a more understanding into Stolas and Blitz, but I think that's a relationship you don't need backstory to. I don't think you need this backstory that they knew each other from when they were kids sort of storyline. I don't think you need that. But I think it kind of just it ruins some of the funniness of the relationship, the comedy of the relationship. Because Blitz originally started it just so he could get the grimoire. I see what they were trying to go for, but I think they just chose the wrong characters for this story. And it really just doesn't get me engaged because it's hard to believe. And it sort of ruins the comedy in the previous episodes. So for that, I'm going to have to put it in meh. It's not awful, it's got a lot of good animation, it's just not good. But where in meh? I think it's better than episode 8. And you know what, why not? I'm going to put it above Spring Broken. I think it's better than Spring Broken. So it'll be the first meh of the tier list. Episode 2. Well. Oh man. This takes place after what happened at the Aussies situation, and yet they act like nothing has happened. They've set up a big conflict in the previous episodes with the Aussie arc, but they just didn't capitalize on it once again. They just completely brushed past it as if it never happened. With Stolas and Blitz, and that's frustrating as someone who watches these. It's frustrating because then you just feel like you've wasted time watching it. And this episode does not do any favors for Luna. Honestly, it does 0 favors for Luna. It just completely ruins any good faith I had for Luna in any previous episodes, because it just she does such like out of character things that make no sense and expect us to be like on her side is like, I don't support this girl. I don't support what she's doing. Nah, I'm not allowing this. I appreciate that they tried to go more in depth with Octavia, and that was handled fairly nicely, but they just didn't do enough with her. And for some reason, they had to add another Moxie and Millie storyline in here. And it hurts my brain because it's so unneeded. It's so unneeded, man. It's so unneeded. Like, not every character you create has to be in every episode, you know? You can exclude some characters. So yeah, Millie and Moxie just felt completely useless in this episode, man. I think this might... some of the... in fairness, some of the jokes were pretty good. It was nice to... when we see Blitz performing, that was actually kind of nice. And I like the little LA jokes that they slide in there. With Blitz on the stage performing, we get a bit more insight into his character and the type of person he is. I thought that was pretty nice. I just don't think that is enough, though, to save this episode. It's hard. It's really hard, man. Am I gonna be brutal? Yes, I'm gonna be brutal. I'm gonna be brutal. Episode 2, Season 2, is my first awful episode. It just does way too many things wrong, and then it does right. And the animation isn't even that good in this episode. Don't get me wrong, it's not bad by any means, just like compared to what came before. You can definitely tell that this isn't gonna stand out amongst the rest. Episode 3 of Season 2. Okay, positives. I like the introduction of a new center of hell. And I appreciate that they tried to change things up here with the green ring. Implement more greenish colors, implement more different types of demons there. With a shark theme, a very mafia-inspired theme. And we get to see Moxie's dad, a pretty entertaining villain, to say the least. You know, he's just the out-of-touch mafia boss, to say the least. Who's very slimy. And I think he works fairly well. Millie is a badass in this episode. I liked that. She was quite enjoyable here. But that's pretty much all the good things I can say about this one. The jokes are awful. The whole idea behind it is just so dull and just doesn't hit. Like, you know what they were trying to do, but it's just not funny. Every joke they set up is not funny. Every stake they set up just doesn't hit the same because you know that it's gonna be okay. There's no stakes. And Chaz. Oh, Chaz. Awful, awful, awful character. I'm glad they killed that bastard off. He is annoying. Again, I get that's the point that make him annoying, but if you're making it like not fun annoying, if you make it to the point where we as an audience don't want to watch him either, just like the characters, then you've done something wrong. And this episode also does the mistake of using way too many sex jokes, man. It does way too many sex jokes. I get that this series is kind of known for its sex humor, but here it's just dialed to 11 and it's not funny. It's just not funny anymore. You've hammered that joke over our head so many times that it's no longer effective, it's no longer funny, and it just kind of feels groan-inducing. Like, every time I watch this episode and I see those jokes, I just can't help but groan and put a hand on my head because it's no longer effective. They've worn it out to the point of no return. So as you can tell, this episode is going in the #1 spot of awful. I did not like this episode when it came out, and I still don't like it now. Episode 4. Oh no, people are gonna hate me for this. All these past 3 episodes have been stinkers, with this one possibly being the biggest stinker of them all. I've made a whole video about why it's disappointing. Go check it out if you want to see why. So I'm gonna keep this brief. Terrible humor, character assassination on Stryker, pretty boring visuals, no interesting like storylines. Blitzo and Luna's storyline, very boring, bad jokes, and it's just cringe. It is just very cringe to watch. So this for me, this takes the #1 spot for worst episode. This is like one of the first episodes where you feel the length. It's so bad you actually feel the length and you like want to get it over with. Episode 5, a Millie and Moxie centric episode. Now, this one I am actually kind of positive about. I really enjoyed Millie's storyline here. It was nice to see her get more spotlight, you know, put Moxie in his place a bit. You know, when he is being selfish in this episode, but like, I'm glad that they acknowledge that and they actually try to change that. And, you know, they give more screen time to Millie and actually make her a stronger character here. The animation really complements this with some, I think, a pretty good song. If there was a song in this one, I remember a song in this one, I'm not sure. We see Blitz's arc in this episode, which was kind of interesting, honestly. I found it quite interesting. They really built up the mystery quite well, because when you see him trying to get into the hospital at the start, you think he is going to try and see Stolas, but they pull the rug from underneath you, which is interesting. His sister? I mean, she's a bad person, you know, kind of understandable, but like, we just don't know why Blitz is trying to find her. And I think that for this type of episode, we need to know, even by the end, why he's doing this. Because he's such a specific character who does very like specific things, that if you just don't explain something he's doing, then it kind of feels like you're ripping the audience off. Although, probably the worst thing in this episode is Moxie. They did him so dirty in this episode, man. I don't know, it's just like they kind of flanderized him a bit. They kind of made his annoyance the most, and his toxicity his main trait in this episode. You know, like always before, he's always been thoughtful for his wife, but all of a sudden he's just now suddenly me. And it's not really established that well or paid off that well. Again, nice to be seen put in his place, but again, it wasn't really that needed. It was kind of forced drama. So I'm gonna put it in meh. Yeah, I'll put it above Spring Broken. I thought it was definitely better than Spring Broken, but it just like didn't do enough to warrant it's alright, I guess. Now, the most recent episode. Episode 6. Really, really good episode. Really good episode all around. Few complaints. Again, if you want to know my complaints and thoughts on this episode, watch my previous Helluva Boss vid. You'll know everything you need to know there. So to keep it short here, fantastic animation, great storyline with Blitz and Fizzarolli, a pretty funny side story with Stolas and Ozzy. The villains were kind of meh. We don't really get a good motivation for them or setup. Kind of bland overall with the villains. But the music was great once again. The songs were great once again, and we actually get a nice payoff to a storyline here. We're no longer just left in the dark or to be continued in terms of storylines. They actually pay off what they build up, and it was so satisfying to watch, and it was handled so well. So for this, I have to put it in hella fun. Is it better though than the previous season's episode 6? Yeah, that's kind of ironic now. It's kind of ironic. Both episode 6 are in the hell of fun. Well, is season 3 going to have the best episode in episode 6 as well? So it's a hell of a fun's going to have 666. I think Helluva Boss season 2 episode 6 is the best episode so far. I think it is the best episode so far. A few problems, but I think it just works the best. It's funny, it's effective, it's emotional. It's just the ideal type of episode for Helluva Boss. Whew. And there's my tier list. This is bound to make some people mad. It's bound to make some people mad. Oh no. But you know, this is my personal opinion. You know, this is just what I think it is. So, what do you guys think? Type it in the comments right now. I want to know, how would you rank each episode so far? Which episode is your favorite and which episode is your worst? I want to know which is which. Which is your best? Which is your worst? This video was kind of fun, man. This video was very fun to make. If you want to see more stuff like this in future, definitely let me know. What else would you like me to put into tier lists? Do you know what could be a good video? Ranking every Primal episode into a tier list. Because as you know, I'm a big Primal fan from my previous videos. And with season 3 on the way, it might be a good time to do that. So let me know, would you like to see more tier list videos in the comments? Let me know, and I'll see you all next time.